Welcome to the first edition of Junior Bike Chat. I'm Sean Wilson, the president of the Youth Cycling Association, and we have a very great jump off for this series. We have Michael and Ian Garrison, who are some of the top young riders who are now professional on the professional circuit, with Michael on Action and Ian just moving off of Action and onto a World Tour team, and we'll get some of their feedback. We have their coach, Rusty Miller, with us, who's going to be part of the Q&A session. I'll be kind of hanging back a little bit here in a moment. And then we actually have a junior, CJ Burford, who's known Michael and Ian for quite a number of years, who's really going to be kind of leading things off. He has everybody's questions in hand, and if you want to ask additional questions, as they come to mind, just jump it into the QA box, and we'll get to those as we move along. As I said, this is being hosted by the Youth Cycling Association and Juniors Matter, and we will be having additional sessions coming up in the future. This one today with the Garrison brothers, and then in the future we're going to have some really cool ones coming up with Billy Innes next week, who's the national team coach, who Ian and Michael have ridden for, and then the week after that we'll be doing one on track cycling, and then after that we're still working on the ones that'll be following up. All right, so I'm going to turn off the screen share, which just kind of shows these pictures of Ian and Michael just in the last year or two. And then there's this other one that was sent over to me from Peloton magazine with Michael doing a wheelie there. But I'll kick it away to CJ.
All right. So we're going to play a little game. Both of you have a piece of paper with your names written on both sides. And I'm going to ask a question, and you got to hold up your opinion for the answer. So here's an easy one. Who's older? All right. So you got it. Good job. And I'm going to ask some more now. And, I have to argue, and Rusty is the tiebreaker. So who has the better sense of style?
Michael's getting better.
Focus on the important things sometimes.
Yeah, now we just wear our team clothes, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, it's all just.
All right. I think Action has cooler stuff anyways. So
yeah.
Okay. Who has the biggest appetite? Okay.
Kind of a tie.
Who has the worst temper?
Worst temper?
Yeah.
I would say neither. I feel like we're pretty common.
I don't know if the temper is really.
Yeah. Who's most likely to work a normal 9-to-5 job in an office in the future?
I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm a cyclist.
I'm not doing that. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a weird question.
Yeah. I mean, Michael's still in school, so.
You're the one that reads all the books, so he's gonna be an electrical engineer. That's his.
All right. Who is most creative? Okay. Who got into more trouble as a little kid?
Temper tantrums. I guess there's the temper when I was young. When I was young, I had the temper. The pouting.
Who's more talkative? Who's most money conscious?
Michael.
Yeah.
All right. Who's the bigger mama's boy?
Oh, we both like mom.
Yeah.
Who,
I mean, both mama's boys.
who drinks the most coffee?
It's changing. It used to be me, and now it's definitely Michael.
Yeah.
All right. Who's smarter? Who is the best singing voice?
Singing voice. I don't know if we either do much singing, yeah.
Okay.
I did a lot on that.
Who's faster? All right. So we're done with that. Let's start out we got some questions about when you were juniors. Can you tell us how you got into the sport?
You want me to answer it? I mean, basically we've been riding bikes ever since we were born. I'm just born on a bike. Mom and dad rode tandems together. And then racing, it was just a combination of stuff. Like, there's a velodrome in Atlanta that we would go out to and do Little League classes on Mondays, and then they have weekly racing. And then I had a friend whose dad raced locally, so he would take me, and he took me to some local cyclocross races and road races, and I just immediately fell in love with the sport. I mean, I always was into other sports and athletics and stuff, but it was just a combination of the competition and then having grown up just riding bikes for fun that really got me into it. And then I think Michael just kind of saw me doing it and got into it also.
Yeah, like he said, we were always around. I mean, our parents rode tandems, and then when we were super young, we took a 3-person bike across Iowa as a family, and then we sort of caught this bug, and I mean, we would always ride to school, and like Ian said, mess around on BMX bikes, and then eventually he showed up at a few races and sort of caught the bug, and then eventually I caught it as well. So.
All right. What's one of the funniest memories you have from cycling as a junior for each of you?
Funniest memories.
Yeah.
I gotta think about that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I've always liked this sport, is just you have all sorts of crazy experiences, and it's hard to remember all of them now.
Oh, is this funny? The Netherlands story? One day I was with the national team in the Netherlands out riding, doing some intervals on my TT bike, and Worlds was coming up soon, and I had a bit of a rough few weeks, and finally I was out on this ride, and I'm finally nailing this workout, this over-under, and over there it's a lot of bike paths, and you have to ride on the bike paths, and I had to go east into Germany and just to find these big roads to ride at speed and to do these extended efforts. And I'm on this, it was a bigger road, but there's nobody out there. And I'm doing this effort, and I'm 6 minutes into this 8-minute, pretty full gas effort. And there's this police car on my left, and he's waving at me. I'm like, oh, he wants me to get on the bike path. And I'm just head down on the time trial bike. But I get on the path, and I've got 2 minutes left, and my music is pretty loud. I mean, it's relatively loud, but the earbuds that I had sealed noise pretty well. And then I finish, look up, press the lap button, and next thing I know, this police car veers off the road into the bike path. I almost crash. These guys hop out, start yelling at me in Dutch, and I didn't have a passport or ID on me, which I didn't know was a law. And next thing I know, there's another police car, and I'm put into the back and taken to the police station. And I spend 4 to 5 hours in a cell in this prison in the Netherlands. for riding on the road. And like, it was a combination of riding on the road and not having an ID. And yeah, I think that was a pretty funny story. Pretty scary, but yeah, it was good.
I would say so, yeah.
Got out a few hours later and rode my bike back home. So, yeah.
All right. I got a question for Rusty. What's a big memory that you have, fond memory that you have that involves each of them, each of Ian and Michael?
I can remember the day that Michael got bike racing. And
Because he didn't at first.
What's that mean?
Hated it.
I mean, there's a couple of years. There's a couple of years where like, oh, it's cute, Michael. There's a little tiny Michael, and he's in a bike race, right?
First race you
Yeah. But it happened that it was on Michael, you might not know this. It was on the exact identical course to the first bicycle race that I competed in my life when I was 13.
Yeah.
And about 20 years later, that same course was used for the U.S. Professional Crit Championship. And Michael must have been when you were 13 or so. Cat 4 race. Might have been 14.
Race age 14, yeah.
Race age 14 that year. Yep. And you went from all year like, oh, there's cute baby Michael, and he's trying to keep up with these big adults. And then just all of a sudden at this race, it was late season, I think it was an August race. And all of a sudden you're in this pack of like 50 Cat 4s, and you did not leave the top 5 for the whole race. And every time you went by, we were like, yeah. And I was like, oh, the boys got it. Yeah, that was a good day.
A question for Ian and Michael then. What role did your local club, I guess it's Mission Source as a team, have as in your development as a junior? And do you stay in contact with them?
Yeah, I think it started as Junior Flyers, which was a local team that's not really around anymore. But I think just having other juniors to ride with and you have guys to look up to. There were some other guys that were older than me, and then there were some guys that were my own age. So just to have other people that were into racing, because none of my friends were really, and I had like this passion that I was super interested in, and then to actually connect with other people, I think that really just fuels the racing and fuels the passion even more. So
Yeah.
you can just find a club and then there's little things you learn skills and stuff like that, but just to have other friends to compete against. And
Yeah, and even just the little things. Like I remember with Mission Source, we'd have this one buy night where everybody goes to a bike shop and gets this discount, and just to be in this big environment of cycling gets you so motivated. And even if you're just there hanging out with some of these older guys, and then your teams when you're younger, they always provide like somewhere to go back to and almost act as a mentor and talk to these really young kids. And I mean, they just seem like friends, but you can like provide them with some valuable lessons. And I mean, they'll watch the pro races and these things, and it's super cool to go back to that. I mean, I remember last year at the Grant Park Crit is something pretty local to us, and to be able to go talk to some of the kids on the Mission Source team and interact with them, and yeah, it's really cool. And that team is definitely a really good organization with a lot of incredible people around it, and yeah, it's definitely super cool to have come from there. And yeah.
Okay. What is something about growing up in Georgia that you think made you stronger or faster?
Stoplights.
Yes. Yeah. Traffic. Sometimes riding through Atlanta, it's like you gotta be heads up, and I think that maybe that helps in bike racing.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we sort of talked about this, and I kind of think being in a city the drivers, you kind of have to, if you're driving in Atlanta, you kind of have to pay more attention just because there's stoplights all over the place. And so there's not as many of these like really scary accidents, but at the same time, it's almost like this playground for bikes, and on the right days and at the right times, you can find these really cool routes with all sorts of variation and people to ride with. But yeah, the stop and go has definitely, I think, assisted us, and just the congestion has assisted us, and the ability to ride in tight spaces and squeezing between the curb and cars.
But your average speed is always so slow. Like, you guys have never even averaged 20 miles an hour on a bike ride.
Yeah. I don't know. We're just, yeah. So.
I always thought that something that helped me was coming from Atlanta and having to adapt to riding here, because it's not very easy to ride and train here. But I made it work, and then wherever we went, the riding was always amazing to me, no matter what. It was like, I don't know, it didn't even matter, but you had a road that I didn't have to stop at for more than 5 minutes. So the fact that it's not good to train here is almost like I had to be even more motivated just to go out and get my stuff done. And then whenever I went anywhere else, it was like, wow, it's so nice to ride here. So yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a weird answer, but
yeah.
Do you think you're closer now or when you were younger?
it goes in waves. I feel like probably when we were younger, it was different. Now we're traveling, like we travel a lot, and we've had to spend a lot of time apart. So it's like, it changes.
Yeah, definitely. As we get older, it's definitely a bit different. Almost like when we were younger, I was more like a younger brother, always tagging along, and now it's sort of like we're both kind of not adults, but like that disparity is getting closer. So it's definitely takes some getting used to, and then times when we're apart for a few months and then we come back and we're like, I mean, personalities can change and vary, and being brothers, like little things you notice. And so, yeah, it definitely varies. But we've always been close.
All right, I got another question from my brother. Are you highly competitive against each other? And when was a time you raced each other and Michael won?
I think we're definitely competitive against each other, but I don't think we've ever actually done a race together.
No. In terms of in terms of just like a head-to-head, there was one time I remember at the Hincapie Grand Fondo where Ian was coming off a 2-week break, and I think I was 15, 16. It was a few years ago, and Ian was coming off a 2-week break, and I had taken my fall break a few weeks earlier, and we hit Skyuka, and I don't even know if you were trying, but I just remember riding away from him on a climb, and it was like the first time I had ever dropped him on a climb. So that was probably the only time. I mean, unless you want to count like Strava segments or different things like that. But yeah, it's
Okay.
no races together yet.
What's some big advice that you have for young juniors?
Have fun.
Yeah.
Do your core. Just enjoy it. I mean, find what you like about it. There's a lot of different ways to like the sport. There's guys that like it for, I don't know, different reasons. But yeah, find what you enjoy about it and work at it. And if you don't enjoy it,
Yeah, it's like
crazy.
Yeah.
But no, I don't know.
I would say, just focus on the fun stuff. I mean, even on bad days or stuff, just trying to find little ways to make it fun, which usually it always is, but sometimes it's just like, if it's raining and 35 degrees and you can't ride, don't freak out. It's not that big a deal. And yeah, keep it fun and don't take it too seriously. I think are one of the biggest things.
Yeah. What's the living situation like now that Ian's a pro and Michael's also semi-pro? Or pro, or whatever you call it.
My plan this year was to be in Girona. That's in Spain, where a lot of Americans are based, and there's just a bunch of pro cyclists there. So my plan was to be there, race out of Europe, but because of this whole Corona thing, I'm back home and Michael's back home, so we're in Decatur right now.
Yeah, both at home. I mean, for me, I had potential plans to spend some time in Athens, Georgia, which is about an hour east, just to be sort of more away from the city and a bit of a better place for some training, but that never really happened. And then with the race schedule that I had planned, it was like it was kind of like you don't really have a permanent place. You're just always moving. And so I'd be bouncing between team races and maybe a few days at home in Atlanta and then over to Europe with USA in Sittard in the Netherlands. So it's kind of like, at least my initial plan for the year was just, you're just always moving. I think.
How do you cope with getting out to ride or getting motivated on in rainy weather and just bad weather when you don't feel like riding?
Just think there's going to be a race that's going to be rainy, and if you go out and ride, you'll be used to it, and then that race will come and you'll have a leg up on everybody else. I mean, but if it's really bad, don't be dumb.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean this, you kind of, one, you need to dress well and stay warm and be smart about that. But
a lot of times you can hurt yourself with the morale a lot more than what you would gain from one ride in terrible weather. I mean, you could finish super cracked and just like not wanting to ride your bike, and if you don't touch your bike for a few days after that ride, then that's going to be a lot more harmful than if you just like don't worry about it, don't stress about it, get back to things the day after. Or but then if the weather's consistently bad, you just sort of have to face things head on, and like it's only a problem because you're telling yourself it's the problem. So sort of a way I'd kind of approach it is.
Yeah, I don't mind riding in the rain too much. I'm lucky now that I have really nice training clothes and stuff like that, and I just go by feel. Like if it's really bad, I'm not going to do a 4-hour ride and destroy myself. But if it's not raining too much, I really don't mind it. I kind of got to the point where I can ride in most weather and still enjoy it. And yeah, I mean, you can think of it as its own training if you want to just do 1 or 2 hours in it, because it is good practice to be comfortable in the wet.
Yeah.
Because there are wet races and a lot of guys get scared. So.
Or you can just switch out, take the cross bike, mountain bike. I mean, you can go slop around in the mud for a little bit, and that's a handling skills session, and
careful with the trails.
Ways to just all of it for the positives.
Does Alaphilippe dance as much in real life, or is that just for the gram?
Yes. Oh yeah, guy loves music, likes to just have a good time. So I saw that question. I thought that's funny.
What's your dream race to win for both of you?
For me, it's Paris-Roubaix. That'd be sweet.
I think for me, I mean, a lot of people say like Roubaix or Flanders. I think between those two, for some reason, I'm more attached to Flanders, but above those, like, I think my absolute dream races to win would be either Amstel Gold or Strade Bianche. Amstel Gold mainly just because all those roads are the roads we train and ride on, and when we're over in the Netherlands with USA. And so, I mean, we've been watching a bunch of these old editions over the past week, 2 weeks, and like we'll turn it on, and within a few seconds, it's like I know where they are, and so that's definitely like an emotional attachment. And then Strade Bianche, I don't even know why. It's just something. Maybe it's the gravel or the finish through the city, or yeah, it just there's a lot of passion surrounding it. Yeah, something about it, something about Italy, just really appeals to me. So yeah, one of those two.
I got a question for Rusty now. When did you know that Ian and Michael had what it took to be pro? You there, Rusty?
Audio.
Sorry, gotta unmute. How did I know that they had what it took? They're guys who you can't keep off their bikes. These two brothers are guys who love cycling as much or more than they love winning. And I've seen a lot of guys come up who are in cycling because they like winning. They like getting on the podium. They like getting the paycheck. They like being the alpha, and they like achievement, and they're willing to work hard so they can achieve. Most cyclists who are in cycling because they want to achieve end up quitting because they like achievement more than they like cycling. And these two brothers are going to continue to go farther and farther and farther in cycling and professional cycling because they love cycling, and you can't keep them off their bikes. That's the answer.
Okay. And can you talk about the value of endurance training?
Endurance training, you got to have it. You got to lay the base. When you finish your last race in September or whenever, you need to take a 2-week break or a little more. And then you need to start getting on your bike in late September, October, and November, and you need to ride your butt off. Lots of long, happy miles. There's no replacement for lots of long, happy miles in the fall.
And I think I mean, Rusty can speak to this, but like in the younger, or in like 13, 14s, 10, 12s, I mean, you're not going to have races like we do that are 200K, that these a really, really big base is important. But it's almost, later in your junior careers when you start having longer races, and when you could be a 16-year-old doing Pro 1-2 races that are 90 or 100 miles, and that base aerobic fitness that keeps you plugging away all day long, and then having the leg in the finale is definitely something important. If that's what if those are the races you're going to be riding. So,
yeah, to put it another way, endurance training is not sufficient to help you win bike races in and of itself, but it sets a foundation for winning bike races. If all you're good at is riding 5 hours at 21 miles an hour, you're never going to win a bike race. But it prepares you to ride your bike a lot faster when you have that endurance base.
How old were you when you did your first bike race, Michael and you?
I remember my first race.
Yours was like Greenville or something. I think I was I did a crit maybe when I was like 12 or something, and then I didn't. I did other stuff. I was like playing lacrosse or something, and it was probably 13 or 14 when I did some cyclocross, and then 14 was like when I really started getting into road racing.
Yeah, I even remember, I'd say my first like real race was at the Donaldson Center in Greenville. I think a lot of people know that famed course. But I think I was 11 because he was going and I just tagged along. I was like, oh, I'll jump in the race. That morning there was snow on the ground. I remember putting on maybe like 4 long sleeve t-shirts and then a jersey, and it was a 3-lap race. So it was 21 miles, and it was a long slog. After about a lap, I was not loving it. But yeah, I mean, I had done a few things before that in terms of like the little races where it's like 200 meters to the line and you're on a little bike and you like stuffed animal at the end. But I'd say that was, yeah, first kind of scarring race that I didn't want to keep riding much after that, but then a bit later the bug came back around. So yeah.
With your new teams, what has changed in your training and your recovery and nutrition?
Nothing.
Yeah, my goal is pretty much the same, I would say. Mine is a bit different. I'm not technically not coached by Rusty anymore. I have a coach through the team. It was a bit different than my previous coaching. Just every coach has a different style, and nutrition is nothing too crazy, I would say. I mean, they give us recommendations, and I've learned throughout the years to figure out what I need for myself. So that kind of fits into what they recommend, and just make sure. I mean, my recommendations are getting carbs. I mean, it's just like mostly carbs, good amount of protein, and a little bit of fat, and keeping it simple, not thinking about it too much. And yeah, Rusty always advises moderation. Eat everything, a lot of fruits and veggies, and just enjoy your food.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me,
Ian, is it okay to have a cookie?
Yes, cookies are prime. Before Junior Worlds, I had so many cookies, and then Brandon and I both ended up doing really well. So I think cookies are the way to go.
Yeah.
Mom makes a bunch of cookies.
Yeah.
Michael, what do you think was your most memorable race last year?
Probably Roubaix. In terms of just pure memories, I had a lot of really cool experiences last year. There was a lot of them. I mean, Kila, we had a really, really great team and was able to win there. And Redlands was super fun as an experience with the pros. But yeah, Roubaix just, I mean, attacking with 100K to go, just not really purposefully trying to take the pressure off the other guys and to be able to ride, I don't know, a few hours off the front, entering every sector by myself with all these crowds on the roads. I mean, 4 deep on the car floor, and yeah, I got caught with 5K to go, but it was quite the experience. Definitely something I'll remember forever, for sure. So yeah, that was really cool.
Give us some TT advice.
TT advice.
Ride your TT bike a lot, ride it really hard, and shrug your shoulders.
Yeah.
That's a big thing that can help you, that you can practice. Is just, it's really easy. It's an easy way to get faster aerodynamically. It's just, yeah, when you're on your bike, you're like trying to put your shoulders to your ears basically. And other than that, I mean,
It's not all about going as low as you can up front. A lot of people, like on their TT bikes, will just take out all the spacers. I want to be aero, but your metabolic efficiency can change a lot if you're too low and you close off your hip angle. And a lot of times you're more aero the higher you are, rather than being like low and stretched. You keep your arms higher and your head's in the same place, and you can really tuck into your hands. I think in terms of position, yeah. In terms of training, you just gotta learn how to bite the bullet and suffer for long periods of time, and learn to love it. Know you're pushing yourself and your limits, and you're only gonna gain from the tough experiences, tough workouts. So.
I just like going fast. It's fun.
Yeah.
I mean, you get on that TT bike and feel how fast you're going. You gotta like that. That's super fun.
Yeah, and
Have fun.
yeah, have fun with it. Put on race wheels if you got them every once in a while, and go for a rip. Like,
Yeah, that is something that I did before nationals last year. Is I would do my workouts basically in what I would race in. Like before Worlds, I would put my race wheels on and my aero helmet, which is kind of ridiculous. But I mean, just so you're completely, if you're trying to focus on a big TT for nationals or something, and you want to be as comfortable as possible on the race day, then yeah, you put your stuff on. If you have it, if you don't, just go out there and ride as fast as you can. But if you have nice stuff that you're going to race with, then yeah, get comfortable with it. Because your helmet could slip down or something like that. It could get sweaty. So that's something to think about.
yeah, and a lot of people might stress about their bike, or the position is way more important than a frame itself, or little pieces of equipment can make a big difference. But if you compare your body, I mean, your body's the biggest thing going through the air. So that can make a much bigger difference. I mean, instead of paying, I don't know how much money for bikes, it's like pay somebody you know well to do a bike fit or little things like that, rather than spending all this money on large purchases. You can do a lot more for a lot less, for sure. But yeah,
And then just do your best.
do your best. Yeah, leave it all out there. Oh, I think he's trying to talk, but your audio's off. I think Sean's trying to talk, but he's on mute.
Can't hear you, Sean.
Sorry, I'm talking to my son off screen. This would be a good time to jump in with it. I've got a little something from nationals a couple of years ago, and I'm just going to share my screen for a moment and just bear with me. So you should be able to see my PowerPoint here. And does this look familiar at all?
Yeah, that's Eric.
Coming into the turn, and then
Yeah.
Can you talk about that experience?
I mean, that's not me, but that's one of my old teammates, Eric Moore.
Well, it took out like half the field.
Yeah, there's I don't know what to say about it. I mean, on that corner there was a bump, and I guess Eric hit the bump and lost the back wheel. So, yeah.
Ian, can you talk about your first World Tour race and like how that experience was?
Yeah. It was Tour Provence, which is in France. I'd never been there before, and I was pretty nervous. I didn't know what to expect. I mean, I knew about the course. I'd been to the training camps and stuff, and I was starting to fit in with the team, but a race is obviously a different situation. But it ended up going pretty well. I mean, the team they were completely open for me to fit in with just getting used to racing at that level. And I was able to help out where I needed to, do a couple different things and help lead out and position some guys for the climbs and for the most part, just get back into racing. So it was really low stress. And then I was pretty lucky to get into a break on the last day and ended up getting third place. So it was a really good experience. I enjoyed the race a lot.
Rusty, can you talk about what you were thinking when you were watching that, or did you watch it?
I was thinking, that's our boy. Yeah. Seldom have I been prouder than to see him with all that TV time in the break. I stopped everything and watched every kilometer of that stage once we realized he was in the break. And he called it the night before. And a minute ago, Ian just said, I got lucky and got in the break. And that's kind of a misstatement. He called it the night before and said, tomorrow I am going for the break. And I said, Ian, getting in the break is a part of your skill set. And then he did it. It was a really proud moment to see.
Ian, can you talk about winning the national champs last year and how your experience was with that?
Yeah, it was a big goal of mine. I just decided I really wanted to get back to riding my time trial bike, and I was also thinking about Worlds at the end of the year in Yorkshire, and it would qualify me, and I just really kind of it was November, December, Rusty, just kind of said like, this is something I really want to target, and worked at it, then went to nationals and ended up I was super focused and had a really good ride at U23, which I was completely happy with, and from there was just kind of going to go to Pro Nats and do the best ride I could, and ended up being good enough to win. So yeah, it was a really cool experience.
How has your training changed because of the pandemic? Or has it?
Different ways. I mean, we're kind of treating it's like the off season almost. So I think we're really lucky. I'm really lucky because I do have teammates in Italy and some other countries that can't even ride outside. So I'm almost riding. For me, it's not too bad. Just it's kind of like off-season training. Yeah. If I were to live here a couple of years ago, so I know what to do. I just do my thing and kind of take the opportunity to work on some other stuff, some strength stuff, and then just little random fun things like ride to our cabin or go for Strava K-runs and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's definitely back to back to the basics almost. I mean, if we did have races, now would be the time we'd be getting into the super high intensity and the VO2 stuff, like really sharpening the knife. But now it's sort of back to the longer rides and then focusing on some of your weaknesses. I mean, for me, I've been working a bit on the sprint, or attempting to work on the sprint, and then just doing little foundational things that I might not have the opportunity to during race season if you've got little imbalances, and working on core and hip strength and glutes. Like for me, my glutes are a little uneven and I sit a little off, and now's the perfect time to really focus in on that and work on the pedal stroke and just a lot of different little things. And then, Strava is a fun way to get your competitive edge out. And then just looking for little adventures to keep things really fun. So, yeah.
Ian, can you talk about your first Quick Step team camp and how that went?
Yeah, that was in December. I had a little thing in October, but that was just, I didn't ride. It was like 2 days from bike fits and stuff. My first one was in December, and again, pretty nervous. I mean, I don't know what to expect. Just going into it, I was excited. And yeah, it was, I'm trying to remember it because we had 2 of them. We had one in January as well. And it was a decent amount of riding, nothing crazy. We had the December one, we had a lot of media stuff, so you got to take care of that, just with sponsors and pictures and stuff like that, and just lots of logistical stuff. And then we did some more riding at the end of it that was pretty low stress. So yeah, it was a good intro. Got to at least be introduced to a lot of teams. It's pretty busy with all the stuff, but that was good.
Talk about relationships and how it affects your performance dynamic. And do you think you should avoid relationships as a cyclist?
No.
I mean, it really depends on sort of like the type of person you are. I mean, I think for some people it can draw them away from the sport, but then for some people it can provide this nice balance that can be needed. I mean, there's times where you might be out of high school, might be the summer, and all you're thinking about is your training and your ride the next day. And say you have a bad day, it's hard to get that out of your head, or you can be thinking too much. And so in certain circumstances, like a boyfriend or a girlfriend can provide you with a nice balance to take your mind off the bike. And then when you're on the bike, you can really focus. But then at the same time, for us, it's pretty hard just because you're always moving, and a lot of cyclists are pretty intrinsically motivated and more introverted. So I think you see more people that are not in relationships.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it has to be like a definite choice or anything. I think for me, I always just, for the most part, I'm just pretty committed to my riding and to my racing and training, that it just worked out that I don't have a girlfriend right now, and I've been traveling a lot. But I think relationships in general are pretty important, and just try and keep balance is important. So, yeah. I mean, just keep that in mind.
What's your favorite post-ride meal?
Can you go first?
Depends. I think usually it might not be your favorite, but as soon as you get back, you gotta get some sort of recovery in, some carbs. Clean athlete recovery mix is fantastic. But then I'll usually get some recovery in, get in the shower. And for me, I'm a big fan of white rice with some avocado, some egg, whether it be scrambled eggs, fried eggs, and get your protein, and then some soy sauce and maybe some sauteed veggies. But yeah, the healthy fats and some good carbs and protein after a ride. Yeah, definitely rice, eggs, soy sauce, or just some cookies if there's some fresh ones. But yeah, that's probably my favorite post-ride meal. That's it. What about you?
Yeah, I'll usually just do a recovery, drink something, take a shower, and it changes day by day. I think now I'm pretty into the pasta just because that's what I eat with my Euro teammates. So yeah, like pasta and maybe some tuna and yeah, protein and carbs.
Right. Yeah.
Rusty, how do you think athletes' training should change because of the pandemic?
In the beginning, you kind of go back to an October, November mentality where it's all about miles and smiles and keeping it fun and keeping it fresh. Like we said, also now is a time to work on some of the fringe things that you might not be able to give full attention to in the middle of the high season. Like Michael said, working on the finer aspects of your pedal stroke. Like with Michael, right, we're finding him another 100 watts in his sprint right now because we wouldn't be working on that if he was racing Redlands in a couple of weeks. And then once we have events on the calendar, hopefully by midsummer or late summer, or if we think there might be events for us to do as cyclists in the fall, then once you have an event that's 4 or 6 or 8 weeks out, then you can start to dial in the specificity and the intensity toward that event. But for right now, it's about continuing to work on your base and making sure that you just love the riding that you're doing. If you're a person who will ride, who will do 3 or 4 or more hour long rides in the absence of a race that's coming up, then you're the type of person who's going to be doing your training when you need to, when we do have races to do. That's a big thing. If you love being on your bike right now, even though there's no podium that you can get on, then you're going to get on podiums once we have races again, because you're one of the people who cares about it.
Ian and Michael, do you have any other hobbies besides cycling?
No. Cycling only. Yeah, I think both of us are super into music, and that's something that Rusty shares also. So for me, listening to music.
I mean, sort of all sorts of stuff. I really like to cook. I really like to spend time just outside doing anything. In the kayak, fishing, going for hikes, being outdoors. Coffee, I guess, is a hobby. I'm big into the espresso and grind, figuring all that stuff out. Just spending time together, going for walks. Other hobbies. I like to make beats on my laptop. That's pretty fun. Take a little piano thing with me, my backpack, and do some stuff in the airport. What else do we do? I think.
Did you play any other sports as a kid?
Yeah, we were both lacrosse players. So you played through 10th grade, 9th grade?
I played JV in 8th grade, and then I started racing, and I didn't play in high school.
Yeah, and I mean, my whole youth was pretty much all lacrosse, driving around Georgia, and played a little soccer when I was super young. But yeah, we were big into the lax bro thing. So yeah, it's a fun sport.
Ian, what was going through your head before you started the World's TT in 2019?
Not much. I would describe it as like super focused and super relaxed. I rode that course so many times, and I had ridden my TT bike so much that I knew what I needed to do, and And I just try to keep myself as relaxed as possible and go as fast as possible. And so, yeah, I mean, I just sort of tuned everything out and just rode. That's comes back to time trial advice, is like, know the course, know everything. So it's not even, it's almost like you don't even have to think about it.
It's like do all the thinking before. Think super hard about it 3 days before, 4 days before, 2 days before. And then the day before, the day of, you just, I got it. I don't even need to think. And then you go off the start ramp and no thinking at all. It's just ingrained. It's second nature. So, yeah.
Ian, when is the proudest you've ever been of Michael after a race?
I got to watch Michael at Roubaix this year. And I saw him, it was my birthday, and I rode in there, and I saw him come, I had no idea what was going on. I just heard his name on the loudspeaker, and I saw him roll in, and I was almost in tears. It was just super cool. So, I mean, there's lots of moments. Maybe he doesn't know that, but I'm always proud of him. But that was one that really sticks out in my head.
Yeah.
What was in your head when you were off the front, Ian, in the, can't remember the name of the race, but your first World Tour race?
Yeah. I was trying to, I've been in breakaways before, and I just kind of was sticking to what I know. And it's just little things like make sure you're eating, make sure you're drinking, just staying calm, not make sure I'm not pulling the most out of these three guys, and then I'm figuring out who looks the strongest. If it comes to a sprint, whose wheel am I gonna try and get on? Which I actually was kind of upset about, because in my head I messed up the sprint a little bit. But yeah, you do enough races that I was a little bit aware of cameras and stuff and that hype, but most of the part just trying to stay super calm and do what I know how to do.
It's almost like in breakaways, you're watching everybody as much as possible, and it's this weird balance of riding as hard as you can. I mean, depending on the circumstances, if it's a breakaway that has a possibility of staying away, it's this really weird balance of riding as hard as you can to not get caught by the group, but still riding less hard than your breakaway companions, and sort of watching when they're drinking and what they're doing and their little body language, and trying to get a look at their faces, or the little things like that, it's just a breakaway sort of thing.
Ian, what did the people on De Koenig think after the stage that you got third in from the breakaway?
Yeah, they were super pleased. I think impressed that I was able to hold it, and everybody was happy for me. So yeah, it was a nice intro moment with the team.
Do you train with heart rate or power, and why?
Pretty much consistently power. A lot of times both, but I really don't look at the heart rate as much. On long rides, I might not put it on. I don't know if his coach is any different, but a lot of times the heart rate, you can feel it out, and you can sort of tell. But power is consistent, whether or not, if you're caffeinated, your heart rate can be higher, and But in terms of training zones, it's all power. Never really. I mean, it's either power or it's perceived effort, perceived exertion. I didn't have a power meter until I was 17, I think, 16 or 17. And just learning your body and not worrying about, oh, am I in zone 2? Am I in zone 3? Just find ways that you love, like ways of riding your bike hard that you enjoy, and having fun. And I want to sprint up this hill. Like, who cares if you're in zone 2, riding at what percentage of your threshold? Like, when you're young, none of that matters. It's just riding. And so nowadays things are a bit more scientific, but I mean, still it's not that big a deal. It's more just riding your bike. So
Yeah, my new coach, he looks at heart rate and power, and then training I don't look at heart rate, I'll look at power if I feel like it. I mean, sometimes I want to, sometimes I don't. So
yeah. It can just be another, if you're worrying too much about that, you're just going to expend more energy worrying than put that energy to use somewhere else. So, yeah.
Our last question, is bike racing still fun now, or does it feel like a job?
Definitely still fun.
yeah, I mean, it may be a different conversation at the end of this year where I had to do 70 or 80 race days. I think at some point I probably would have been pretty tired, but for me it's still fun.
If we keep on having to race on trainers consistently, if that becomes a thing, then maybe it'll feel like a job. But yeah, always fun.
At what age do you think a junior should have a coach, like a legit training plan?
Do you want to chime in on that, Rusty?
Yeah, that's going to be a better question.
It always helps to have a community. It helps to have a coach, but it also helps to have community. It helps to have a village. It helps to have a club of cyclists in your town, people all ages that you can ride with. I generally don't start working with athletes until they're at least 14 or 15 on the younger side. And Michael alluded to one thing I'm big on is athletes that I work with don't get a power meter until they're 17. When you're 15 and when you're 16, you're learning how to ride your dang bike. You're learning what it feels like to go really hard. You're learning how to listen to your own body. Maybe you've got a heart rate monitor at that point. But I firmly believe that these two guys that you guys are listening to are better cyclists because they learn to listen to their bodies. They learn to judge their own efforts when they were 15 and 16 without looking at a power meter. But yeah, so I think when you're 14 or 15, you need mentors and you need a village, you need a community around you. Maybe by the time you're 15 or 16 or 17, then you have a coach. Of course, every circumstance is different. Some people don't live in a town where there's a bunch of cyclists they can ride with. But if you are in a town with a cycling community, you need to get to know those people. You need to be doing the Tuesday Worlds or the Wednesday Worlds, whatever's in your town, and learning not just from your coach, but from all the other cyclists around you.
Well, I don't have any more questions. If there's anything anyone would like to talk about.
Well, I think, with that, I mean, this has been a great conversation, and way Rusty wrapped it up there talking about training is a good way to end this. I would just like Michael and Ian to, wrap us up and basically give just a couple little pointers for the kids out there and what they should, think about during this pandemic. I mean, you've kind of talked a lot about, the different training and things like that, but how do you just stay motivated to keep yourself going on a day-to-day basis? And then we'll just call it a night. And I want to thank everybody for coming out. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Us also definitely want to thank everybody for tuning in. listening to us talk a bit. But yeah, I think in terms of the pandemic, focus less on racing as results, and really just embrace the process and enjoy that. Enjoy pushing yourself and enjoy the warm weather and enjoy, if you have it, enjoy being out on your bike and getting to explore parts of your town or parts of your city that a lot of people don't see. And yeah, just focus on the process. Bikes are for fun. Anything else?
Yeah. Find what you enjoy. And for me, I found it pretty motivating just to spend time watching old races. I think that's something I talked to Rusty about, is use this as learning time to figure out, to watch races and GCN and stuff like that. And I think for me, just learning new things about the sport is super motivating. And then you learn something new, and the next day you want to go out and ride. And know that it'll come back eventually. The racing will come back, and get creative, have fun. And our mom is around the corner. Thank your parents. I couldn't thank our mom more than enough, because man, she put in so much work to like fuel our passion. So yeah, be nice to your parents, and really thank them, and listen to them and do what they say. So
Yeah, always have fun.
All right. Well, with that, thank you much, guys, and have a good night, and stay safe, stay well, and tune in next week with Billy Ennis, the national team coach, who knows both of these guys quite well, and his good friend Joe Holmes, who they'll be having kind of an open discussion about this time and what it represents for junior cycling. All right. Thank you, and have a good night.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.